Ladies and gentlemen,
Welcome once again to the TangentCast.
how be you?
Better actually. The cough that's kind of been bothering me is mostly gone, although it's usually when I'm recording that it decides it wants to show up. So
It mostly comes when I'm recording.
Mostly. But it's pretty much gone other than the occasional like trolley moment, so yeah, that's good. Other than that, I've been very busy preparing for the festival I will be at next weekend.
And did you want to tell the audiences which ones that will be?
It will be Bloodstock Festival up in Derby.
Derby.
Up north and stuff, you know.
That was terrible. You should feel so bad for that
I don't
impression.
feel bad. I don't feel bad at all.
Yeah. Well, you should. It's basically what my point of view is.
So I've still got fun stuff like, hey, let's make sure the tent hasn't fallen to pieces and stuff to check. But other than that, you know, I'm pretty good. How about you?
I'm okay.
That's helpful, thanks.
You're welcome.
Perhaps want to elaborate at all?
Just really busy as normal with everything. The Vulcan interview is up.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I was really happy about that. I really had good feedback from everyone involved.
Did they like the interview then?
Yeah, both Neil and Tom really liked it, so I think I've made friends. I made friends. But yeah, they were really happy with the interview. And they said there was quite a few really good questions there, and that some they hadn't even thought of before. So I kind of got them to think outside the box, which is good. And on top of that, we're probably going to be doing a few other little bits and pieces in the future.
Well, you've scored another interview for some point in the future, right?
Yeah, I'm in negotiations with the developers.
Do you want to say who or no?
You say.
I forget the name off the top of my head. No Matter Studios, that's it. Yeah. The guys who are making Pray for the Gods, which, disclosure, I did back on Kickstarter.
Yeah, and I was like, Gafta Kada!
Yeah,
when I saw it.
I saw the trailer and I was like, oh my god, it looks like Shadow the Colossus, shut up and take my money.
So they said that they're interested, but I'm negotiating with them, like, whether we can do it, because obviously they're pretty busy at the moment.
Yeah. Project. Well, they just got their project kickstarted, so there is that.
Yeah, and they're a very tiny studio. There's only a few of them working.
There's like 3 of them, I think, so they're being fairly ambitious, I think, with this.
I imagine they're probably going to possibly hire a couple more people for this.
I think that's one of the things the budget is going towards, is extra animators and stuff like that.
Yeah. To be fair, that they've managed to do a pretty darn good job considering.
I mean, the trailer was really promising. So
I know, it's all in game as well. It's no pre-rendered.
Really?
Yeah, and you can even climb. They've even said in their facts that the climbing was real. Yeah,
like they were saying like how well, in Shadow of the Colossus it was literally just climbing, you know, with your hands basically all the time. But with this one, there's like a grapple that you have, and that's going to be used. And
yeah, they said it's all real and pretty part of the game. So, doing that, finishing off the GTX 1070 stuff, working on a couple of technical analysis in the background.
Cool.
Going to the gym a lot.
As always.
Yeah, I'm trying to drop my body fat percentage at the moment, so I'm like on the road to the final
countdown.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to like 10%. That's the goal.
Right. Okay. How's that going?
Oh, I had it as about 13%.
Not bad.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking to go under 10.
Isn't that kind of encroaching on a bit unhealthy?
Yeah, it's like, I think 6 or 7% is considered, like, yeah, you shouldn't stay at that percentage for long. Because I think Hugh Jackman was 6% in the Wolverine.
Yeah, but well, even bodybuilders are only at that for like competitions and stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to drop to 9 just to say I've done it.
Fair enough.
But I probably, long term, I want to stay at about 10 to 11. And aside from that, I've been playing I Am Setsuna and really enjoying it. But there are a couple of things, but I'm going to be starting a review of it today.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to talk too much about your thoughts here then?
Well, overall, really enjoy the game.
Yeah.
I have some criticisms, though.
I would hope so. Put on your critic hat for a second.
Okay. Essentially, the big issues I have is a couple of the elements of the game's combat aren't well explained.
Is it turn-based, I would assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's active or wait, so you can go with like active. In other words, whoever's ATB gauge fills up.
So
faster.
like Final Fantasy 9 style.
Okay.
Okay.
But So the criticism I have is some of the combat mechanics aren't explained well enough.
Right.
There's a little bit too much backtracking.
Mm.
And I feel that the budget on certain areas was lacking. So, for example, one of the big criticisms was like, I feel that sometimes the reason they send you back to an area is to artificially pad out the length of the game a little because they're running out of like budget. So, for example, you see quite a few monsters recycled.
Yeah.
Now that is an issue on other games as well.
I've heard that a lot of the monsters are just like palette swaps, basically.
Yeah, and the issue is as well, like the monsters look very cutesy. So for example, you'll be fighting like against a bunny rabbit that's riding on top of a snowball.
Right.
But then the monsters are supposed to be like this deadly force that are like eating people. So it's like there's a little bit of the sprites are very cutesy, but it's also like these monsters are supposed to be deadly. On the other hand, there was one boss that I was fighting yesterday. No spoilers, I'll just say it was in a cave, which is towards, let's say, the 3/4 mark, 2/3 mark of the game.
Right.
And I got a ruffle stomp. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. And I essentially figured out there were two reasons why. One, the flux/mechanics, which I'll go further into in the review. I honestly wasn't using them correctly. And the second reason was my equipment wasn't ideal at the time. So I did a bit of grinding, did a little bit of switching around, murdered people who were revving up in the background. And yeah, it was all good. It was all good in the hood.
So, have you been playing anything else other than I Am Setsuna?
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate?
Yes.
Go on then, please.
A little bit of Batman, the Telltale Games one, obviously.
Early thoughts, I guess.
People were complaining about performance. Now, I did play it post-patch, because I played it about a day or two after launch. But
Yeah.
I still maxed everything out on an RX 480. Now, I have.
You know how it is. Sometimes it's just very specific.
I
setups,
do
don't
have
you?
a theory, and I haven't had time to test this out. But I think it might be to do with the fact that the RX 480 has 8 gigs of RAM.
Right.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if some folks who are playing on, let's say, a card that has like 3 gigs of RAM, but even has a pretty good GPU,
Yeah.
they might have texture issues then.
Right. Okay.
It's like, for example, Batman. You know the Batman Arkham Knight? There's a prolific difference between the R9 290X, which has like 4 gigs,
Yeah.
and the RX 480, even though technically the performance of the cards is roughly on par.
You still have more memory though.
Yeah, so I've noticed that as like a bit of a trend, especially on games that are memory. This is one of the reasons that in a couple of videos I've actually said, you know what? I'd rather pay the extra $30 and get the RAM, even if I'm playing at a low resolution like 1080p, because that extra RAM, it's okay 90% of the time it might sit idle, but I'd much rather the card have go to like 4.2 gigabytes and not have to do swapping over the PCIe bus rather than like, oh dear.
Yeah. Nah, I get what you mean.
So yeah, that's just a little bit of a thing. But anyway,
Yeah, but early thoughts on the game. I mean, I have seen a little bit of it online. I haven't played it myself, and it looks pretty decent. The engine is definitely improved.
yeah, they've definitely improved the quality of the assets and also the animation. Overall, I'm enjoying it. I mean, pretty early on, my plan is to finish the I Am Setsuna review,
Yeah.
and then I'll get on with Batman. But I just don't want to bite off too much at the moment
Oh
because
no, of course.
I'm finishing the 1070 thing. And I've still got a couple of other reviews in the pipeline. Plus, I'm trying to do the interviews. Plus, obviously, loads of other crap as well, like normal life.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've seen, it's a alternate universe kind of thing.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I've been playing a fair bit recently because I've been doing like some first impressions reviews and stuff for while I'm away. So I played a bit more We Happy Few. Don't want to talk too much in detail because I will be uploading a fairly lengthy opinions video before I go. But they definitely need to work on it a lot, is what I'm going to say. You know, I'm still a bit like about the survival mechanics. I feel like they don't really gel at the moment. But again, this is an alpha build, and I've pretty much said to myself that now that I've done these videos, I've uninstalled the game and I won't touch it again until it's out, basically, because I don't want to...
Or at least massive patches have been released.
Yeah, but the thing is, they've said that they won't put story content in until the game is actually out, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And what I'm playing the game for is the story and the world, so I won't play it until the game's out now, basically, because I don't want to spoil the game by seeing it when it's very incomplete, like it is now. So, yeah, basically. But I've also played a bit of Duskers, which we got a code for today.
You got a code for We Happy as well, right?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Right.
Duskers is actually pretty cool. I actually really like it. Again, there'll be a first impressions review up, but...
What style of game is that?
It's kind of weird. It's kind of a strategy game, kind of.
How on earth are you good at that?
But well, I'm not.
Okay.
But it's basically like you're on a sort of ship thing, and you have like some drones that you can command,
Right.
and they can each have different abilities. Like one can tow, one can power generators, that sort of thing. But the main method of like you can just move the drones around manually with WAS and D, but you actually have to use like commands. So like a command, like basically what DOSBox basically kind of thing, where you're typing in like, oh, navigate drone 1 to room 3 or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So you're like literally just sort of typing in commands basically as your main method of controlling the drones, which is kind of cool. Now
Give me an idea of a command.
As I just said, like navigate. So you got the drones will be like 1, 2, 3, and 4 basically.
Okay.
So you'll be like navigate 1 to R1, which would be room 1, room 2, room 3, that sort of thing. But they'll sometimes be like hostile drones or other things that you don't want to see because your drones can't attack at all.
Right.
So you either
it's a bit like a really timid internet forum.
Yeah. So sometimes what you can do is like you can kind of herd them into other rooms, so like you can open the door that they're in, they'll go into another room, and you can kind of lock them out so you can go in that room.
Okay.
Or they'll be like, oh, there's a ship, like there's a turret on the ship, and if you can find the ship interface and you have a drone that can access it, you can literally take the evil drone into that room and turn on the ship defenses, so the ship takes care of it for you, kind of thing. So it's really cool, actually. I mean, I don't know anything about programming, and I got it pretty quickly, and I'm enjoying it. So there we go. I might even play more of it after.
You might. Yeah, you might.
Indeed. Anyway, so let's go on with the topics, shall we?
Sure.
Shall we start with the NX performance? You did the video on this, I believe.
Yes, I did.
Would you care to enlighten the listeners?
Yeah, I would actually.
Go on then.
Well, basically, they've said it's between the PS3 and PS4 in terms of graphics. That's like an arbitrary statement. That's a bit of an arbitrary... I mean, to say that's an arbitrary statement, it's a little bit like me saying, well, you know, that shop, the shop you're looking for is between, you know, London and New York. It doesn't really narrow it down that much.
I was going to say, like, that's quite a wide breadth you're talking there.
Yeah, but, I mean, I've basically said it's between the two, essentially. That's how I'm looking at it. But it's still, I mean, if that's mobile, and by mobile I mean, like, that's, like, when it's in handheld mode, that's actually pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, but it's hard to know, like, if that is when it's handheld, then that's actually okay, and then assuming that we have the docking station arrangement where it's more powerful when it's plugged in to the docking station.
Which is not confirmed, which is bizarre.
No, they haven't confirmed shit about the NX.
Well, they confirmed it's an NX, and they confirmed it's March.
That's about it, yeah, but we don't know what it is my point. So yeah, I mean, it could be good, but I'm still dubious.
I'm 50-50 on it. I mean, they did say there'd be loads of AAA games, like, you know, the big first parties within the first 6 months or something, which is quite a big window.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, as I've said before, that helped murder the Wii U is Nintendo were pretty lazy with the launch lineup, and generally there's not that many great games on the Wii U. Like, there's a decent collection now when the console's basically dead, But for a long time, there was no reason to own a Wii U, really. And I feel like a lot of Wii U owners probably feel a bit shafted, to be honest. I know I would if I bought a Wii U on launch.
Yeah, I think, I was actually doing some thinking about this. Like, if you overall consider the launch lineup, of the Wii U, there wasn't really that many games which made you think to yourself,
damn, I need to get a Wii U.
On the other hand, I think the PS3 launch lineup wasn't that great either. Like, it was pretty bad, but it was only really facing against the 360 at the time, which hadn't completely hit its stride either. I mean, the 360's launch lineup was eh. It had a couple of good games, like Perfect Dark Zero. I know that was a really Marmite game. I really enjoyed it because at the time I was playing with my friend Stuart a lot online with the 360. And, Gears of War came out sort of within the launch window, and I use sort of as in, like, the loosest possible terms. But the problem was, the Wii U came out, but the 360 and PS3 was so well established by that point, and then, of course, everyone knew that the PS4 and the Xbox One were going to be coming out, so it was like, eh.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, hopefully Nintendo will tell us what the NX is soon. I'm thinking around the time of Gamescom, they won't be at it. I'd be very surprised if they are, but they might do a Nintendo Direct stream around then, just to tell us, hey, this is what the NX is.
I do wonder if that's one of the reasons Sony haven't announced the Neo as like a counter.
I mean, possibly, but I don't think Sony's all that worried about Nintendo, to be honest. Because, like, even if the Neo is a flop, right, I don't think they really care, because they have sold, 40 million PS4s or something ridiculous?
No, it's not shabby.
I mean,
but
like, while they'll care, they're not exactly going to be crying into their soup at night if Nintendo slightly edges out the Neo, because it doesn't matter, the PS4 basically ground the Wii U into fine particles.
It's true.
I'm just saying, like, they're not... If I was Sony, like, my main rival is Microsoft and PC gaming.
Yeah.
That's who I'm worried about. I'm not that worried about Nintendo.
Speaking of which, did you hear about the rumours with Tim Sweeney where he's basically said that they want to start releasing patches for Steam to...
Yeah, we discussed that last week.
Oh, yeah. But there's apparently yet more rumours. Basically, the latest rumours, and I didn't read the whole thing, so I'd encourage you all to do Googling, unless you've covered it. Basically...
I haven't seen any rumours apart from the ones we discussed last week.
From what I've heard, there were rumours that were swirling around that, you know how normally you get like an install of a game, let's say for example Tomb Raider, right?
Yeah.
And you can navigate inside that folder.
Yeah.
So for example, if it's located in like your Steam directory, it'll be like Steam apps and then the games directory.
Yeah.
And if you want, you could, I don't know, you could copy like a movie file, you could copy a JPEG or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, the rumours have it that they want to start encrypting the install directory of a game for Windows apps.
Why?
So you can't do that. So you can't mess around with it. So it's basically like a locked garden.
So they're basically trying to kill modding, is essentially what it is.
It's modding, piracy. It would be pretty much everything. So you would not be able to do anything inside that directory. So let's say, for example...
sometimes you need to, though. Like, sometimes the only way to fix an issue is to go into the INI file.
Yeah, done. And another, from what I've heard, now I don't know if it's going to be the inis, which may be stored in a different directory, but definitely things say for example, you wanted to go in and modify the textures, or you wanted to put in like a post-party. I'm sorry, that's my phone because I'm a twat. Let's say for example, you wanted to modify the textures of the game, or let's say for example, you wanted to change. If you wanted to modify anything of the game, even theoretically, it could even be like injecting like anti-aliasing, textures, anything. You won't be able to do it.
So, in theory, then, would this affect recording of the game? Because obviously, a way a lot of the recorders work is they literally hook into the game itself, right?
Yeah, you can't do that with a lot of them. That's why Fraps doesn't support the X12 at the moment.
I just don't know what Microsoft are playing at. Like, who are they?
I don't think.
Who are they who are they trying to target with this? They're pissing off everybody. It's like, okay, you can't mod, that's bad enough. You can't even...
I believe Shadowplay works with DirectX 12, I think.
Well, that's because you can force it to capture the desktop. So if your game's running, it will just do it that way. Like, if a game's difficult to record, that's usually my go-to solution is to use Shadowplay and just record the desktop. But, you know, you should just be able to use Fraps or DxStory or whatever your program of choice is. So it just seems like they're pissing off everyone, potentially, with this. Obviously, it's just a rumour, but let's say it's true for a second. Like, they're pissing off modders, they're pissing off general consumers who know basic stuff like going into the INI file to fix issues like perhaps for some reason it doesn't have an options menu and it's loading at a weird resolution. The solution to that would be, oh, just do it manually in the INI file. Like, okay, there's that. And also, oh, by the way, say goodbye to all the YouTube videos, say goodbye to all that free marketing, Microsoft, because now people can't record your game without really serious workarounds.
I mean, they might fix some of that stuff. The biggest issue, however, is mods are going to go bye-bye. So that means, let's say, for example, that you have issues with, you know, even like the Dark Souls. Remember the original Dark Souls?
Yeah, the original Dark Souls was awful, and then Durante came to the rescue, but without him...
Yeah, but that's going to be a thing of the past.
Well, in theory.
Yeah. And, so those are the rumours, basically.
Is this just for, like, their games? For Windows 10?
They're basically... Well, I didn't read the whole thing, but from what the brief look I had, so that's why I'm encouraging you to Google rather than take my word for it, but from the brief look I had, it was a service that they would offer developers. So in short, if they were to release it on the Windows Store...
Right, so it's optional then?
Yeah, the problem is, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of developers went for it.
I don't know, I mean, like, I think any developer who goes for this is just going to annoy people.
Now, this is why I keep saying that I personally want Steam to, you know, combat this as much as possible. And I don't want DirectX 12 to have a monopoly. I prefer Vulkan. From what my discussion with Tom and Neil with the Kronos interview, they were telling me it's very easy to actually port from Vulkan to DirectX 12 anyway. So one can make a very compelling argument that you could create your game with Vulkan in mind and then simply port to a Microsoft ecosystem if you needed to.
I mean, I would love to see Vulkan become like the norm rather than DX because, you know, this will kind of cripple Microsoft's plans in this regard.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright, well, let's move on because we've been talking about that for a while. We went off a massive tangent. Let's discuss Starcraft. As there's a report floating around that Blizzard are going to reveal at the WCS Championships in September that they're working on Starcraft HD, and then more details to come at BlizzCon in November, is basically what the report says.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks did not play the original, including myself.
No, I didn't play it. I mean, I've played the shit out of StarCraft 2, all 3 expansions. I still need to finish Legacy of the Void, but I played Heart of the Swarm multiple times, same for Wings of Liberty as well, so I would actually like to go back and play the original StarCraft, but it has...
Excuse me, by the way, I'm getting absolutely fucked over with hay fever at the moment.
Yeah, I know. Not very pleasant, but, you know, hay fever does what hay fever does, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I was absolutely fine until I stepped out of my house.
Yeah, and then all the pollen was just like, hi!
Exactly.
Hi!
I actually think it's her cat hair.
Probably. But yeah, again, this is not confirmed by Blizzard, and we've got a while to wait before it's revealed because WCS is on like the 8th or the 10th or something like that. Championships. But apparently it's going to have obviously improved graphics and improved UI as well. Now my only real question is, okay, is this going to be a full remake of the game in the StarCraft 2 engine, or is it just going to be StarCraft but with, you know, the graphics that exist just shined up a bit? Because, you know, in theory, making it in the StarCraft 2 engine sounds easy in theory.
Wasn't there rumours they were going to do this with Diablo as well? I think
yeah,
it was Diablo 2?
Yeah, there was rumours of Diablo 2 remaster. Now, in theory, I would say that easily the choice is to make it in the StarCraft 2 engine, but the issue there is obviously it would be easier just to remaster the original because you don't have to remake the story, or import the voice lines in, probably improve those voice lines because the quality is not going to be great considering the game is very old now.
Well, it depends how it was originally captured. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they remade it with the current engine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like them to do that, but it does mean they have to remake all the story and stuff, so it would mean more work. But I feel like with how old the original Starcraft is, it's probably not salvageable.
I was going to say, like, what are you going to do? Upscale from like 640 by 480 or whatever it was originally created?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think, to be honest, it's going to be them remaking it in the Legacy engine, so we'll see, of course, but I would totally be down for this, because again, I
Would
never...
you be down with the sickness?
I would.
Okay.
I never played the original Starcraft, and I would actually like to, because, yeah, I love Starcraft, even if I'm terrible about it. What?
I wonder if they'll release it just for multiplayer.
There's no need to do that, because the multiplayer is still played.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, they could do it that way, but I feel like they'd be missing a trick if they didn't do the whole game.
Maybe.
And they could just do the multiplayer, but given that it's still played, especially in Korea, I don't think they're like worried too much about that.
Meh.
I mean, people still play Brood War as well, for goodness sake. So
I prefer Boob War.
So that's pretty cool. Another thing I want to discuss is Battleborn, otherwise known as Gearbox's Tears. Basically, despite the fact that the player base is declining and it basically got crushed into a fine paste by Overwatch, 2K are sticking with it. They are determined, I guess.
Right.
And they've got quite a few DLC packs planned for the game.
Oh, so well.
But to be honest, like, I don't mean to be cynical, but to me, it's just like the countdown to free to play has begun for this game. It's like Evolve took what, a year or two?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, a year to come out to free to play, but I feel like it's going to be even shorter for Battleborn.
Yeah. So basically, if you cough up for the DLC, thanks for the money, bro.
I mean, the game already has microtransactions. All you have to do is make it free to play, and there you go. You're good to go.
Yeah. Except Defeat.
It's just
wasn't even part of Humble Bundle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, I love Humble Bundle. Sorry, but usually, once a game has appeared in the Humble Bundle, it's kind of a sign that, you know, it's on its way out.
It's not exactly a good sign when it's like for $15.
You know, but you know, usually you get games in there that are pretty old and you get them pretty cheap, and you know, it's just the developer trying to sell a few more copies and obviously generate some money for charity.
Yeah.
You don't really see modern games in there unless they're really expensive.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you could get The Division, but you basically paid full price for it at that point. But Battleborn was $15, like 3 months after it came out.
Seems reasonable.
And I'm just like, that is brutal.
Yeah, and it's not like it was only $15 for Battleborn either. There was like loads of other games built in with it, so it's like you're basically paying like 15 cents for the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you had to pay $15 to unlock Battleborn, so 3 months after launch, the game has gone from $60 to $15.
Welcome to the circus of values.
And I feel bad for the game in a way, because from what I've heard, it's a good game. It's not really my thing, because it's more of a MOBA than a first-person shooter, but I feel like Gearbox and 2K and Take-Two did this to themselves.
Basically.
Because they decided to take on Overwatch, and they didn't need to do that because the games aren't even the same at all. They're very different. They're so different. Apart from the similarity of, it's a hero shooter. That's literally it.
It's a video game.
Yeah, they're both video games, and they both have colourful graphics, and they both have characters with unique abilities, and there is where the comparisons stop.
Well, there's one area they certainly diverge in.
The success?
Yeah. Like a crippling fear of success.
Whereas Blizzard's just rolling around with a pile of money at this moment.
Basically.
So I feel bad for the game, but at the same time I feel
like come on, little fellas, you can do it.
I feel like they did this themselves a bit, to be honest. I mean, I rag on the marketing a lot, but I feel like how busy the graphics were also didn't help, because I've watched a few videos of it online and you can barely tell what's going on. There's so much out on screen. There's all these particle effects and
failure.
I'm not being funny, but in this day and age, one of the key components of a game is how watchable it is on YouTube, Twitch, and that sort of thing. And I couldn't tell what was going on. I really couldn't. I was like, what the fuck is happening? There's so much going on screen. And eventually they fixed it, but they should have launched with the effects reduced, because I feel like people watching it on Twitch like, oh, what's Battleborn like? You know, do I want to pay $60 for it? And they couldn't even tell what was going on because there's so much on screen.
It looks like someone just, you know, got a video overlay of fireworks, put it on top of the game, and profit.
I mean, Overwatch is kind of bad in that regard as well. Battleborn was even worse.
I have to say, I've not played Overwatch, but every time I see it, I'm just like, no.
No. It's a bad Overwatch.
No, you're a bad Mr. Keller.
Whereas I love the game.
Yeah, I'm just like, no. You're gonna, you know, be spanked and sent to bed with no breakfast. Or, you know, supper, actually. That would make more sense.
I was going to say.
Well, no, it hasn't even started the day. That's the thing. That's where I was going with that. So, like,
okay.
you know, it's just gotten out of bed. It's tired. And it's like, I don't like your face. You go back to bed. But, Daddy, I'm hungry. It doesn't matter if you're hungry.
Alright, shall we wrap things up with the Xbox One S then?
Yeah, Microsoft sure are. With the sales figures, they're just doing really well at the moment. They're actually they're selling out in the UK and other areas.
Really?
Yeah, it's ruffle stomping. It's selling really well.
I'm genuinely surprised.
I'm not.
Why?
It's 4K streaming. So you've got 4K output, 4K Blu-ray.
But it's already irrelevant because the Scorpio is going to be out next year.
Yeah, you're forgetting one thing. How much is a Scorpio going to be?
I don't know.
Exactly.
But still.
Yeah, but for most folks, it's like the console plays better, right? It's got higher frame rate in games that are unlocked. GPU and ESRAM run higher clock speed, so slightly more stable frame rate. Slightly higher resolution in certain games that feature dynamic resolution. It runs cooler.
Okay.
Power brick, less of an issue.
Well, I was going to say it's built into the thing,
Exactly,
so
it's less of an issue.
Yep.
It's quieter.
Mm-hmm.
Puts out less heat.
Right.
Obviously, it's much smaller.
Yes.
It basically is everything you could want on a console. The only issue with it is, as you said, Scorpio. My thing is, it's like, if you've got an original Xbox, I personally wouldn't buy an S, but...
So is this people who were kind of umming and ahhing about whether or not to get an Xbox One, and then people saw this new one that's slightly better and was like, oh yeah, why not?
I have no idea.
Because, I don't know, I mean, if I already had an Xbox One, I would not go out and buy an S.
You know...
That's just me, though, obviously.
Then again, it depends. Like, for example, let's say that you have a 4K television, then there are reasons to buy it. Like, for example...
Yeah, how many people have 4K TVs?
A lot more than what they did. I did research for the adoption rate when I was doing the Scorpio analysis. Over the next year or two, it's certainly going to increase. But also, we're going to see... Because this Scorpio also supports HDR much better, so you get better images, especially with TVs which are capable of HDR output.
Yeah.
So, I mean, currently, you know, games consoles usually do high dynamic range internally. So what happens is the game renders the internally at high dynamic range, maximum color depth.
Right.
And then what's known as tone mapping maps the color down to the lower quality or the lower quality color display that your TV can output.
Right.
But what happens with HDR TVs is that you get a better one-to-one, so you get better quality shadows, better quality mid-tones, and better quality highlights. So, for example, and I always use this example, but let's say you have a space scene of, like, explosions going on.
Right.
If you're on a regular TV, what can happen is some of the colours look muted, or you're going to notice some of the subtle explosions may, for example, fade into the background of, like, brightly lit stars.
Right.
Whereas if you're watching that on a HDR TV, you're not going to get that. You're going to notice the colours pop a lot more. It's going to look a lot more vivid. Essentially, one of the easy ways of explaining it, although it's not exactly the same, have you ever taken a photo of, like, the moon?
Yeah.
And does it look like it looks like in your eye?
No.
Well, one of the reasons for that, there are ways around it, like you can change the ISO, so basically it captures more light. But one of the reasons it is because, like, it's basically the reverse principle here. So, for example, the subtleties of the moon the lighting don't appear properly on the television, and that's exactly the reverse of what's happening. That's one of the reasons that professional photographers now are moving towards HDR cameras.
Interesting.
That's the brief synopsis of it. I was speaking to it with AMD's Robert Hallock as well. Him and I are having a Twitter discussion as well. It's kind of cool. So so one of the benefits of the Xbox One S is just that, the fact it can...
Well, no, I'm not saying it doesn't have its benefits, but I just remember thinking at E3, like, they announced the S at the start of the conference, and then at the end when they started doing the Scorpio thing, I was like, wait, this can't be Scorpio because they just announced the S. I honestly felt like they've made the S irrelevant within the space of an hour.
Yeah, but you're forgetting it's going to be like 18 months later.
I suppose, yeah, there is that. But, I'm glad it's doing well. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean... It's kind of weird because I root for Microsoft, but at the same time I curse Microsoft. Like, I root for them in the console space because I don't want Sony to have it by themselves, because that's dangerous.
Yes.
But I also don't want Microsoft to succeed 100% in the Windows, desktop space, because that's shit for us as PC gamers. So it's like I have this double standard.
No, I know what you mean. Like, I feel the same way, that I want them to succeed in the console space, if only to give Sony a real competitor, because, again, if there's no real competitor, you have no reason to innovate and people get lazy. Like, that's what we've seen happen with, like, graphics cards a couple of years ago, and Nvidia were clearly, like, just getting a bit lazy.
Well, that's the same thing with PC CPUs. Like, back in the day, like, this is way back. This is, like, late 90s, early 90s. Basically, AMD CPUs needed to run on Intel motherboards.
Right.
So basically, for example, with the Socket 7s, you would see that the K62s, I believe it's Socket 7 K62s, they would basically run on the same motherboard, essentially, or the same sockets. What happened, however, is obviously Intel would sell AMD the rights to do that via licensing.
Right.
But it used to fuck AMD over because A, you're giving money to your rival to run on their hardware, and B, Intel's rather aggressive, to say the least, branding and deals, they would basically crush AMD out of the market. So, for example, they would bribe manufacturers, for example, Dell, to say, no, don't stock that stuff, or we're not going to supply to you, that type of thing. What AMD, however, did... back on the Athlons, which were the K7s, the original Athlons, they were built on a 180 nm process. They brought in a load of designers, and basically they got, I can't remember what the technology was, but basically it's a different bus structure. They licensed that, and they worked with a couple of other companies with the copper interconnects inside the CPU.
Right.
And essentially, another company were being bought out. I don't remember the company's name, but basically AMD grabbed all of their engineers because they were stopping the manufacturing of processors. So AMD grabbed all of their engineers, the CEO at the time, and basically they brought them in for Athlon, and Athlon turned out to be about 10% faster to 20% faster than their Pentium 3s. And because they didn't rely on the same chipset, for quite a long time, AMD were actually very competitive to Intel. And it's why that both Intel and AMD, for quite a while back in the late 90s to like the 2005-ish, they were very much like one was faster than the other one was faster, and there was actually a race to 1 gigahertz, and then there was the race to like other processor speeds, and there were some issues with both architectures, but it was really interesting.
That's what I'm saying though, but if you don't have that competitor kind of nipping at your heels, you just get complacent. That's just how it is. So that's why I kind of root for Microsoft in that regard, but their strategy for PC gaming is concerning, to say the least.
Yeah, but that unfortunately is the nature of the beast. So what we have to hope, of course, is we get,
stuff.
Yeah, a competitor. So I'm hoping Valve can do something, because at the end of the day, like, Valve must be noticing this stuff, and we know.
I have no doubt that Valve have something in the works. I mean, if they can just improve SteamOS and actually market it properly, because I feel like they just released it and didn't bother marketing it, then we might actually have a solution on our hands.
Then again, Valve and Sony aren't exactly one of the things that Gabe Newell said when he saw the PlayStation 3 announcement. He said the thing's an utter failure, that it needs to be taken back to the drawing board.
I mean, He wasn't wrong at the start, though, was he?
Well, it wasn't that he felt that the PlayStation 3 was a bad system in terms of like the games or anything else. He was talking from a technical point of view. It was way too fucking complex, and the SDKs available for it at the time were shit. Plus, as well, it had way too much memory reserved for the OS, but Sony made a lot of changes towards the end.
That's what I'm saying. Like when towards the end of its life cycle, the PS3 was actually pretty decent. But
I love the PS3 towards the end.
At the start, it was a bit of a mess because no one understood the system, and they had this weird thing where this, the power cell or whatever the balls
It was just called Cell.
Yeah, the cell thing, and
it wasn't properly documented.
Yeah, so obviously they learned from that with the PS4, making it really simple, basically PC architecture, as you've discussed at length.
Oh, it's supercharged.
Supercharged. Don't forget the word supercharged.
Yeah, supercharged.
Anyway, I'm basically melting, so how about we call it there for this week?
Sure.
Yeah, so hit us up with any questions as always, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week. As will Paul.
Will you be here next week? Wait, how are we going to record the next week's podcast?
Well, we'll have to record it after I get back from my festival, and I'll basically be dying.
I'm good with that.
Don't expect me to have much energy, but I'll say words.
I'll just poker occasionally.
Words will happen out of my mouth.
I'll just poker occasionally, it'll be fine.
Anyway, thanks very much for listening, guys. See you next week.
Pretty much.
Bye.
Pretty much.